Morning, Brenda.
Good morning, everybody.
Mute.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the October 21st meeting of the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Board to order. Morning. And if folks wouldn't mind muting just for the introductions. Oh. Great. I want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, and just want to acknowledge and how grateful I am for their continued kindness and grace in working with us on a government to government level. Myself and Director Arbor are here in the civic room, and most of the other directors are online via Zoom. I'm going to ask for an approval of the agenda.
Move adoption.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Did you get the second?
It was
Okay.
Wally.
Thank you. Any additions or changes? Hearing and seeing none, that's approved. The next item up is the minutes of our September 9th meeting for adoption.
We proceed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none. Anyone opposed? And that's carried. And first item up is our report for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Advisory Committee for receipt.
Move receipt, Evans.
Second, Wally.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. And do any directors have questions on the advisory committee minutes? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Is anyone opposed to receipt? And that's carried. Item number 2, the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service Asset Management Plan for 2019 to 2038 for receipt.
Unger moved receipt.
Second.
Moved Unger and Warren. And I'm going to turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, directors, and happy to be here on this Thursday, October 21st. Russell Dyson is on the call, also our Chief Administrative Officer, but I'm in the boardroom here in the civic room, so I'll be introducing staff for the next few reports. For this first report, I'd like to introduce Vivian Shaw, our Senior Manager of Solid Waste Services. So over to Vivian.
Welcome, Vivian.
Thank you so much, James. Through the chair to the board, the asset management plan here provides a long-term technical and financial roadmap for a sustainable management of the CSWM service assets, and also sets out a process for the maintenance, repair, and the replacement of those assets as they age past their service life, or if they exceed the risk tolerance for the CSWM service based on a predefined criteria. And this is all with the intention to build and maintain a reliable solid waste system. So given the cost associated with the capital projects, namely this construction of the new engineered landfill, the closure that are coming up, the post-closure liabilities, the new transfer stations that are up on the docket for Tassus and Savalis, our regulatory monitoring and maintenance requirements, this asset management plan really just lays out our obligations and ensuring that we have the appropriate financing in place to fund the operations and the capital projects, with the goal of striking that fine balance between disposal fees at the transfer stations versus the taxation to reflect the true cost of the service, and to motivate that positive behavioral change, and also to avoid wild swings in both of those. And also to provide a stable reserve fund contributions and accruals of those annual surpluses, when they're available, to offset future costs, to ensure the equity between current and future user of the service. So the financial analysis indicates that the current total replacement value for all CSWM assets are valued at roughly about $27 million, which means that there's an annual average contribution reinvestment back to the service of roughly about $1.03 million over the next 20 years. And just to clarify, that's not additional cost of the service, and it's already reflected in our financial and capital plans. This exercise is merely to formalize and lay out our asset inventory and asset values and how those funds will be allocated. And it's important to highlight this plan is also based on a few key assumptions, specifically the assumed population growth and the 70% waste diversion rate as laid out in our solid waste management plan. So the success of those diversion plans will be directly correlated to the volume of waste that we receive at the landfill, which obviously has an impact on the tip fee. So we will be closely monitoring those financial implications as to ensure that there's enough revenues on par to balance out the expenditures as our current existing and new zero waste programs mature over time. Available for any questions if there are any.
Thank you for that, Vivian. I'll just wait for folks to raise hands if they've got questions. In the meantime, I have a quick one. I noticed that we have the extended EPR now includes mattresses, and we are currently charging for mattress disposal. So how would that work moving forward?
That's a great question. So we have a report following this one that outlines all of that, but the mattresses currently are charged out at, I think, $15 per mattress. And it accounts for roughly just over 100 grand based on last year's intake of mattresses. So based on the new EPR program that was released back in September, mattresses are on the docket for the new under the new EPR program, and it's slated to be fully operational by 2025. So in the interim, we will still continue to be segregating this huge waste stream from the landfill. So we'll be shredding the material so that we can conserve that valuable airspace within the landfill. But as the ministry works through and develops a framework for setting up the necessary infrastructure and the policies, we will be turning that over. We don't know exactly what that looks like just yet, but that will be a service, or sorry, that will be a cost that will be taken away off of the CSWM books.
Yeah, thanks. Really comprehensive piece of work in regards to the report. And I was looking at some of the planned capital project on page 31, and I noticed that we are planning more asphalting of some of our facilities, if I'm correct. And mostly focus, I think, around CRWMC, CVWMC, ORD, and QIRD. I'm wondering if places like Hornby could be considered as well for paving access, or if that has entered any kind of consideration.
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that through our financial process as part of our capital review, and we can put that in for consideration as well.
I guess the benefit I see is maybe a bit of reduced maintenance, and also for the public that use the facilities, especially in the summertime, a little bit less dust, and not great for the health sometimes on windy days. Thanks.
If I can just add to that, thanks, Director Robert. And of course, the Hornby Island location is under the not under the CSWM service, but certainly we can take that back as staff and take a look at it through the Hornby service.
Thank you. I see Director Lee has her hand up.
Thank you very much. This is an excellent report and a really good guidance for us in addressing critical issues that need addressing due to health and safety and failure risk, and especially those listed on page 16. All the items in table 8 on page 16 need to be repaired or replaced within the next year or so. as they're listed critical, like fuel storage tanks, toxic gas tanks, and that kind of thing. We need to know these things and be on top of them before there's failures and before there's environmental damage. So I commend the report, and I think that it's good to have a plan. We're not going anywhere without a plan, so this is excellent, and I support it all the way.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments or hands up. So if I'm seeing no more questions on receipt, is anyone opposed to receipt of this asset management plan? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Item number 3, extended producer responsibility 5-year action plan for receipt.
Move receipt. Cole Hamilton.
Second, Wally.
Thank you. And back to staff.
Thanks, Chair. Jennifer Ivan, I believe, is on the call, and Jennifer is our Diversion and Operations Support Coordinator and will introduce this staff report.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Through the chair to the board, we're very excited to announce the BC MOE CCS's Extended Producer Responsibility 5-year action plan. If I could get page 2 pulled up in the meantime, no rush, that would be great. So this plan is a result of years of work at the hands of many municipal governments, Indigenous groups, and a range of stakeholders, informally and formally, providing consistent feedback, requesting more programs for hard to handle or recycle products, and wider scopes for existing EPR programs. That's perfect, thank you. These voices were formally heard through the Clean BC Plastics Action Plan back in 2019. And then in September of 2020, an intentions paper was released by the MOE with the goal to develop a multi-year strategy. You amazing board members provided feedback on our draft response letter through the December 2020 board meeting, with our final feedback being sent to the MOE December 18th of that year. So the ministry released their summary report from all of the feedback received on March 8, and the 5-year action plan was released September 10. So what does this mean for the CSWM service? The BC Action Plan outlines the priorities that BC must take to reclaim more recyclable materials, meaning more airspace for a valued landfill. So that's why I wanted to pull up figure 1 while I'm speaking, so you can get an idea of the action items and when they should be implemented. So a major highlight is the development of an EPR program for mattresses, as Vivian mentioned, thank you. And to give you some perspective, in 2020, over 7,200 mattresses were received at the Comox Valley and Campbell River landfills. And that also includes some of the mattresses received from remote sites that are pulled out of those bins. I took a look at the 2021 data, and it looks like we're going to be headed towards similar numbers for the end of 2021. So an EPR program for mattresses could eliminate upwards of $110,000 for residents that are currently paying to dispose of these mattresses. Another benefit, so similar to what happened with Recycle BC with packaging and paper, an EPR plan will allow more material from mattresses to be recovered and recycled versus landfill. Currently, we're pulling the mattresses apart and recovering the metal material, but EPR programs allow for higher recycling options for things like the foam and the fluff. And the numbers I mentioned didn't include box springs, by the way. Another important product category the MOE has action to expand on is what they call moderately hazardous products, meaning more products will be included into the existing product care program or similar. So to give you some perspective there, in 2020, our HHW program cost our service about $319,000 to safely dispose of all the materials that currently sit outside of existing EPR programs. So any increase in the scope of the hazardous waste program could provide significant cost savings to the CSWM service. The MOE also set a timeline, it's at the bottom there, to evaluate industrial, commercial, and institutional product packaging and paper. And I don't know about you, but it's been a significant concern in many communities in BC, ourselves very much included. This is a phone call I take weekly. There are more highlights and products included in the paper. These are just the highlights. So I look forward to continuing to provide you any updates as they come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we'll just, I see a question from Director Cole-Hamilton and then Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Jennifer, for the report. I think this is really encouraging to see greater responsibility financially by producers to take care of the products they're creating. So I was just in favor of everything I read there. I just had a question, just a little bit of clarification. There's a reference in the staff report and in the materials from Clean BC to emerging electronics. And I know that e-waste can contain incredibly valuable materials, so some of those rare earths and very, very rare materials, but they're also potentially hazardous when, so I think having greater responsibility is fantastic. I was just wondering what range of materials emerging electronics would cover.
That's a very good question. They haven't announced that particularly yet. I did have a phone conversation with the MOE about some of the more vague aspects. So the moderately hazardous material category and the emerging electronics, they will be providing more detail as time comes. And I've put our name into the hat, my name specifically, to provide them detailed information of products that we receive outside of scope. So I don't have any specifics at this time, but I will make sure to bring them up as soon as they come up.
You're totally on top of that. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you for asking.
Director Arbor?
Thanks. I agree. It's really wonderful to, to close the gap between what we know can be recycled and what is actually recycled. So every time we take another step, I think we all have, definitely on the coast of BC, that same dream towards zero waste, and these efforts really takes us towards that. And I keep dreaming of the day where basically everything you have is easier to recycle. Like we still have a few items out there that are difficult. But I wanted to really thank staff, because I think staff really identified the problems, and it's really great when we see that local governments have successful advocacy and working with the province and others to forward these efforts. So big kudos to you, Jennifer, and the rest of the team for your efforts on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Director Unger?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the report. Just to clarify your comment there, Jennifer, on the mattresses of $7,200 a year, did you say they did not include the box springs?
You're absolutely correct. So the way we fee when the materials come in through our scale program, it's a flat fee for the mattresses, and then there's additional cost allocated for the box springs, and it just depends whether or not they have springs in them. So you're absolutely right. It's $7,265 in 2020, and it doesn't include all of the box springs. So it's I'd say conservatively estimating at least 20 to 30% higher than 7,200.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lee?
Thank you. I would just, through the chair to Jennifer, I was wondering what the situation is with glass recycling, because if there's one thing that I get feedback from the public on that they want is glass recycling. They don't know what to do with the glass, and they don't like the idea of throwing it. I try to personally reuse glass containers for jam and things like that, to put other food in if once they're sterilized in that. So, but I mean, there's a limit to how much glass a person can reuse at home. And people are asking all the time, every time I go to the recycle bins and on the phone, like, why don't we have glass recycling?
Brenda, can I ask you a question? Are you talking about, so there's glass recycling for product packaging. Are you talking about out of scope items? So not the mayonnaise jars and not the salsa jars. Are you talking about like Pyrex and dishes and window glass? Or are you talking about?
Oh, sorry, I'm talking about food containers, like, glass, salsa jar, glass jars
That's perfect.
that
Thank
you
you.
buy at the grocery store.
Yep. So those are an acceptable item as per Recycle BC. So if it had a product in it and it's glass, it absolutely can be recycled at a depot. The reason, if there is curbside, the reason why they keep it at a curbside is it's just a real mess when it gets dumped in with it being commingled, and it's a health and safety issue. But the mega bags that we accept glass product packaging, they are recycled, and they are recycled in BC. I talked to Brendan about it this year, and I believe insulation, aggregate, and there is a third item that it is recycled into. If you were interested, I can re-email and get that information to confirm.
So you're not encouraging then, from what you said, throwing glass into our recycle bins at Oyster River, for example?
Oh, that's a good question. So the Oyster River is not a Recycle BC depot. And so that, Vivian, correct me if I'm wrong, that depot in particular doesn't accept the foam, film, and glass. Part of Recycle BC is that the depot has to be manned, and those particular items can't go into that bin just because they're not Recycle BC depot bins.
Seems to me that we could work a solution where you'd have a separate bin for glass and somebody checking on it, like people, it seems like a lot of waste going into the landfill if we can't recycle our glass in the rural areas.
Yeah, I myself live in Fanny Bay, so I'm not in the north, but I definitely am in the south, and it's I wait. I have a decent sized bin, and within a couple months I've got to bring it to the landfill in the recycling area. I know not everybody visits the landfill, and then there's the bottle depot in Courtney as well. But you are correct, that Oyster River department, it's not a manned depot, so they don't accept it.
Okay, but there should be a signage and at that Oyster River depot to direct people to take their glass to the landfill. We regret we can't recycle it here because it's an unmanned depot, but please take your glass to the landfill recycling.
No, that's a good idea. Thank you. I'll bring that up to my supervisor and see what we can do. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Director Lee, Director Arbour, and then Director Adams.
I guess we're done with the celebration, and we're all of the achievement of adding products, and we're already looking at the next steps, which I think will be a good conversation as part of our solid waste management plan. And I do want to speak in favor, in support of Director Lee's comment. I think a lot of people, both who have curbside and those who don't, glass is definitely an item that comes up, and it would be great if we addressed it for the next number of years. I have the same question as Director Lee, even as part of curbside recycling, isn't there an opportunity once a month or once every 2 months to offer the collective of things like that in all of our areas? So maybe more information in the future, but on to the next step and the next level of advocacy, I guess.
Thank you. Director Adams?
Thank you, Chair. And following up on Director Lee's comments, I totally agree that when you have an unsupervised site, then your control of mixed use and inappropriate sorting does occur. And it just reinforces the fact that we should continue to lobby Recycle BC for manned locations, either in the South Campbell River or Area D, to be able to look after that population at the southern end of the city and Area D residents, and even those in the Oyster River area. Right now, we have the sole drop-off location at the extreme north end of town, or the landfill, which is logistically not meeting the needs of the majority population without having to travel for a long distance. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Adams. I don't see any other hands up. So I'm going to call the question on receipt. Is anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Some great conversation and great ideas. The next item on the agenda is waste receptacles in the CSWM service for receipt.
Receipt.
Moved by Director Lee and second by Director Arbor, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And this one goes back to Vivian Shaw, as do the next two. Vivian.
Thank you so much, James. Through the chair to the board, Stephanie Vidal actually prepared this report, but she's away at the Coast Waste Management Association conference as a panelist representing CSWM service here. So I'll be presenting the report on her behalf. So this report here stems from a resolution from the June board where staff was tasked with exploring waste receptacles for popular beach accesses within the CSWM service. So the provision for waste collection service at beach access are generally fall under the function of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and under their road right-of-ways that provide access to off the main roads to the beaches. And any land that falls below the high tide line falls under the jurisdiction of the province. And from what we've been able to gather, generally speaking, and the garbage receptacles that are located in parks area where there are cooking amenities and comfort stations, that's generally how they've been determined as areas to provide those services. But where there are no amenities or washrooms, there isn't real need for those garbage receptacles. And following the parks guideline of pack in and pack out, we want to continue to encourage residents to take their waste homes for proper disposal and recycling with the goal of the promotion of stewardship and preservation of land for everyone to enjoy. So based on our review, it was determined that Modi is the responsible party for most of these accesses, as their service do not manage the collection and disposal of waste from receptacles. The respective parks departments within the CVRD and the SRD already oversee a number of these and provide the service in some areas, which meets their respective review criterias. And we want to continue to encourage residents and users of the parks to follow those that pack in pack out policy that they've worked really hard to implement. So and also following the last advisory and advice of Drew Hadville, the Director of Operations from the City of Campbell River, he gave us a good contact at Modi, and this individual was able to confirm our findings and stress the need for consistent oversight if we were to contemplate this. And it is very time consuming and costly to manage and has a tendency to attract a lot of illegal dumping, both from residential and commercial sources. And based on our findings, we're recommending that we do not pursue the placement of waste bins at the beach accesses within the service area. That's all for me. Open up the questions.
Thanks, Vivian. I see a hand up for Director Grieve.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds kind of like a Pollyanna idea and, very worthy, but let's get real, maybe. What we're going to see is what we see everywhere already. Whereas, if there's no restroom facilities, you follow the toilet paper trail down into the woods. You get discarded stuff everywhere. Understood, that people pack in, pack out. I mean, that's very laudable. But, in the real world, that isn't going to happen. So are you saying then that Modi are going to be shirking their responsibility on their property and we should do the same? I don't think it's reasonable. We're already making, as we've said before, we're making recycling exceptionally difficult. And now we're putting up more barriers. And what do we expect the outcome to be for this? We're going to see more waste on the roadside. We're going to see waste at the beaches, the trailheads, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the this board, you can't shirk the responsibility like this, just pointing to what the accountants tell us would save us money. So I definitely advise that this board to maybe rethink this. I think we're going to bear the brunt of it otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Grieve. Director Lee and then Director Arbor. Oh, Director Lee, I think you have to unmute.
Thank you for the report and the information contained in it. It's very useful. I agree with Director Grieve that somebody's got to take some responsibility. And the reason I brought this up in June was that I have a beautiful white sandy beach in my area, right in the center, which has loads of tourists in the summer. Any particular day, there's 200 people on the beach. And the Highways Ministry used to provide 2 garbage receptacles for years and years. And then suddenly they changed their policy, took the garbage receptacles away from their parking lot because they own the beach parking lot in front of Stories Beach. And now they hire a couple people, come out every 2 or 3 weeks and they with picks, and they pick up the floating garbage that's floating around the roads and the beaches and manually pick it up and chase it around and take it away. And I thought, why can't we have receptacles like they have at the Oyster Bay rest area, which are bear proof, they're really useful. And I've been liaising with Highways manager about it, and she keeps reciting these new policies of Modi that they won't allow garbage receptacles in rest areas that are less than 15 kilometers apart. And it's so arbitrary, and it's so, it just ignores the fact that it's not residents that are throwing around garbage, it's all the people that are visiting my area, you know, from other places, from other provinces even, and just chucking their stuff on the beach. And I have residents who walk the beach, elderly people with garbage bags that go and clean up after these people. They fill up 1 can of garbage a week at their home, and they pay for taking it away. Well, I just thought Waste Management goes through my area to pick up garbage every Friday. Why can't we have a bin and get them to pick up at the beach? You know, that would be so easy. But we have a lot of beaches, beach accesses as well, and through the Comox Valley and Area D. And I know that Stories Beach isn't the only place experiencing this problem, but I do appreciate that perhaps our Parks Department, if I could, after we finish discussing this, if I could have this issue referred to the SRD Parks and Planning Manager, that we might be able to come up with a means of negotiating an agreement with Moti to put garbage receptacles there and pick them up as a parks function, like the Comox Valley seems to be doing. So I really appreciate the report and the directions that are in there.
Thanks, Director Lee. There's a nice lineup of hands up. So I'm going to go to Director Arbor, and then we have Directors Morin, Abram, and Cornfield.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll speak in support of the report to not to first of all recognize that it's a challenge, but also to ask the questions as to whether it's appropriate for us to invest a lot in it. And my suggestions would be to kick this issue into the solid waste management plan. I think we could capture more information around Modi's role between now and then, because in my area, there's 2 places that are garbage kind of places that are maintained by Moti, I believe. One is at the Inland Highway at the rest stop near Buckley Bay. And the other one is on the old highway just south of Union Bay. And I would be curious to learn what is the experience of Moti and in terms of volumes, in terms of costs of maintaining those sites, whether they see themselves expanding that program to add more areas, whether we're finding a ton of recyclable contents and household contents at those locations. So I think those questions would really help us in places where service like that already exists, to understand first whether Moti would be a partner in extending what they're doing, so we don't have to pick it up. And second, if it's also indication that it's not working for them, maybe that can feed into our solid waste management plan, into a broader thinking and partnership approach. That'd be my thoughts.
Thanks, Director Arbor. I'm wondering if staff would want to comment about Moti's role, like with the discussions that you had, have they indicated whether or not they can increase or expand what they're currently doing?
Thanks, Chair. I'd let Vivian, if she wants to weigh in on any discussions with Moti. What I would want to comment on though is the core function of the CSWM service, and I think there's been some comment amongst the directors on those core activities. And the land that we're talking about here, it's not owned by the CSWM service. It's very much Crown land. And so it is a Moti responsible, and I think advocating to Moti for increased service and attention is certainly within this board's responsibility and role, and something that can be quite easily done from CSWM's perspective. Any sort of investigation or inquiry or digging into what is happening on other Moti properties, it does start to raise expectations around maybe doing something else that the CSWM could do, and that's, as the report says, it's not part of the core function of CSWM. So I would caution that too much investigation could raise expectations, and then we start going down that road of further activity. I also heard mention of the potential for referring this to Parks Department in the SRD, and certainly at the CVRD, there is that experience with respect to the Park Service and road right-of-ways. And so a referral to the SRD for the Park Service may be entirely appropriate as well. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for that. Director Morin.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I agree with what James just talked about. I do think it needs to go somewhere. You know, there was a time when many of us who were kind of hikers or backcountry people, it was the understanding that you packed out what you pack in. But I think we've really seen with COVID that there's many new people out there recreating who don't seem to get that practice. And I have had people, you know, wonder why there aren't garbage cans at certain places where there's a lot of people in traffic. So if it doesn't belong here, I hope that we can refer it somewhere, because I do think it's an issue, and to have the expectation that people are going to pack out what they pack in, I just don't think is realistic. And then we end up with, you know, more problems. So thanks.
Thank you. And Director Abram.
Yes, thank you. We've spent a lot of time over the years talking about illegal dumping, and I see this as, you know, just a smaller version of exactly that. And some of the comments made by Director Grieve and others, I totally agree with. You know, if we're not going to do it, which according to James, it's not our responsibility because it's not within the solid waste management service, that's fine. But the least we could do at this time is have this board write a strong letter to the appropriate agencies, and that may be Moti, Parks, ministers, whatever, as in our advocacy role, to let them know that, you know, this really does need to be dealt with. It's a reality. It's not something we're just saying, oh, it might happen. It happens. And as Edwin said, you know, it's constant. You don't have to walk very far on any of our beaches or trails or whatever to know that it is a problem. And now with COVID, my God, how many COVID masks have you seen on the ground? Everywhere, not just on our trails and stuff, but they're everywhere. Where people just, they figure they're okay, out of danger, take it off, fling it. So I think, at least on the advocacy end, we should our chair should write a strong letter backed up with some factual information to ask that these agencies, including the Forest Service, I think Charlie's going to speak next, but Forest Service used to do an incredible job on all of the forestry roads, not just at the forestry campsites, but other places where they would, just provide a trash can. And there's no reason why we couldn't go one step further, have a trash can and a recycling bin. If we're still going to have this single stream recycling for a while, it all goes into one bin, gets picked up and gets sorted somewhere. So anyway, I'd just like to see some action by this board in that direction, not that we take it over, but that we ask the appropriate parties to, get on it. And that can only come from a board resolution. So thank you.
Thanks, Director Abrams. And I see Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. And let me just put my hand down there. Yeah, and thanks, Jim, for tying it back into what I did for so many years with the ministry. If a site is clean and tidy, it usually stays clean and tidy. But the converse is also true. If it's a messy site, then it will get worse. And that's the nature of people. Most people, and Brenda, you would be surprised at the number of your residents that throw out their junk. It isn't visitors, it isn't tourists, it's everybody that uses the sites. And so if it's kept clean and tidy, it usually is treated clean and tidy. And most people look at it, if you're not concerned about it, then they're not going to be concerned either. No receptacles. If you decide not to put out any receptacles, you're going to still have to clean up the area because a certain amount of litter will start to build up. Sorry. Anyway,
I lost.
Go ahead, Director Cornfield.
Thank you. Not all sites need the same level of maintenance. There's always a variety based on levels of use and problems. But I agree wholeheartedly with our Deputy CAO that it's not the Solid Waste Management Board's function to go out and provide all the receptacles and maintain the sites. Just because others aren't following up on their responsibilities doesn't mean to say that we should jump in and do something that we're not really mandated to do. We shouldn't take it on because others won't do what they're supposed to do. So I agree that it's a letter, strongly worded letter needs to go out, but to whom? And I say it's right, very clear. It's recreation. There's 3 levels of management of recreation in this province. One is the Provincial Parks Department. The other is Ministry of Forests. And the third one who has an authority to manage for recreation is regional districts. And so that strong letter needs to go to regional districts and cities, villages, towns, that local government, to say, hey, there's a problem here and you need to deal with it. And just one little comment on sorting. We found out, we tried doing the different 45-gallon drums colored to match the recycling stream to get them to sort. Guess what? It didn't work, except in the case of bottles and cans. We'd made considerable money off of at a popular site after a long weekend. They're really good at separating out cans and bottles, but forget the rest. It just went into the same. So I think it's something you've got to look at sorting the waste after, not at the time of picking up, because yeah, you just create more problems. Anyway, I agree. I think that we shouldn't take it on as our function, and we should be letting the regional districts and local governments advise them that there's a problem and that it's theirs to solve. Along with Modi. Modi has limited responsibility. It's confined to the road right-of-ways.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee, did you have your hand up again, or?
Well, I would like to, I'd like to capitalize on Director Abrams' comments about advocating to Ministry of Highways to restore garbage receptacles and pickup, at least at Story's Beach. And it is my residents who are cleaning it up after whomever. I don't know who's throwing this stuff down. Lots of tourists end up at that site during the summer with their RVs, and I don't know where it's coming from, but I do know my residents are concerned and they're picking it up. And about whether the solid waste program would help with it, we do sponsor beach cleanups in other areas and give them free, waive the dumping fees and whatnot. Some things we do are discretionary and not totally within the plan. So I don't see why this might not be, but I think the first move is to request the Minister of Highways and and somebody who's senior above the local North Island maintenance people to review this situation with garbage at the beach and find and either change their policy to allow for more highways rest areas to be cleaned up, as they used to do for the first 20 years that I was elected. Highways picked up garbage out of receptacles at Story's Beach. And then they, for no reason, changed the policy and there's no more garbage pickup there, and it's all over the place. And I just think that they need to change their policy to allow pickup in high tourist and highly visited areas like that on their properties. So I would move that we write a letter. Maybe Director Abram would like to make the motion because he's
Director Lee,
mentioned
I'm
it
just going to
first.
stop you there because we're still on receipt. So
okay, after receipt.
Sure, that's a notice. Okay. And Director Hillian, and then I'm going to call the question after Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I think that it does make sense that this is dealt with at the regional district level. And I note that we may be able to get some clues from other areas who have handled this. In particular, there was a lot of publicity about Tofino's and the West Coast's issues with garbage being left in recreational and beach access areas in the first summer of the pandemic. So we may get some clues from there, but I agree that this is something that could be appropriately handled at the regional district level. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So on receipt of the report on waste receptacles, is anyone opposed to the receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Now I'm assuming that we're going to have an amended recommendation from what we see on the screen. Sorry, Director Arbour.
I know there's other motions considered, but I felt I would like to put forward the staff recommendation first and then see if there's additional motions, but I'd move that the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service not pursue the placement of waste bins at beach locations within the service area.
Okay, there's a motion. Do we have a second? Okay,
Second.
that's seconded. So on this current motion that you see the recommendation from staff, does anyone have any comments or questions? We can have a subsequent motion if necessary. Director Grieve.
Yes, I will obviously not be supporting it. If you look at the name of this board is Waste Management, is integral in it. And I do think we are quite literally kicking the can down the road, and we'll end up with this discussion a year or two again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments
Um,
on this motion?
Madam Chair, on this motion, I think it goes too far, because if we want to advocate for highways to put in waste receptacles and pick them up, then this motion would preclude us from doing that. It says not pursue placement of waste bins at beach locations. And that's not what we want to do. We want to pursue placement of waste bins. We just don't want to be the organization that is going to handle it, because it's not on our property.
That's what I read, that the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service not pursue, but I'm just going to ask staff if that's their understanding, and would it preclude us from advocating?
Thanks, Chair. I think the intent of the recommendation, the wording is such that the CSWM not pursue its own placement of waste bins, and it would not preclude any subsequent motion coming forward where the board is advocating to MODI or other levels of local government.
Okay, thank you.
Then I would move an amendment to say after pursue its own, so that we can advocate. You know, somebody might bring this up in the future and say, well, we said we weren't going to push this and we're not pushing.
Second.
So,
okay, is that considered a friendly amendment, or?
Directors, we're actually, it's 10:21. It is the great shakeout of BC occurring at this moment. There is an earthquake occurring. Please get under your desks and protect yourself.
Consider the following questions. Are you prepared? Do you have an emergency kit stocked with enough food, water, and supplies for everyone in your home? Have you secured your belongings so they will not fall and injure you during a storm or quake? Do you have a plan to reunite with family if the phones are interrupted? For more information on emergency preparedness, visit the website shakeoutbc.ca. Thank you for taking part in the Great British Columbia Shakeouts.
Well, Jim, what's it like under your desk?
Can't hear you, Charlie. Sorry.
My legs are fine.
I hope everybody took cover where you were. Sorry for the interruption, but this is a good reminder for our emergency preparedness. So I'm afraid I've lost where we were on. We had a motion that I believe was seconded to amend the recommendation. So to add the wording, not pursue its own. Is that the understanding? And I'll go back to Director Lee for a clarification. Oh, maybe Director Lee.
Dr. Lee, you're muted.
thank you. yes, pursue its own placement of waste bins at beach locations within the service area.
Okay,
That's the
so-
amendment.
Thank you. So on the amendment then, do we have any questions or comments? And I see Director Arbor's light.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I think it does say the same thing as currently stated, but for the sake of getting the meeting moving forward, I'll be in support of that small adjustment.
Okay, thank you. And speaking to the amendment, Director Bissinger?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I support the amendment and I support the motion of having us as advocates, but similar to Director Grieve, I don't see this going anywhere with MOTI and perhaps the SRD. Like, I feel like we need to step up. So I'll be voting against it with the hopes that we can actually get bins at those locations, even though acknowledging that it's perhaps maybe not our bailiwick, but I think something needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. And Director Cornfield, speaking to the amendment of its own?
Yeah, just in terms of, I didn't think we needed it, but I guess it clarifies it a bit. The other issue, if we're wordsmith it, are we only concerned about beach locations, or are we looking at trailheads and other areas?
I think you're opening up a bigger can of worms. So I think for now it's beach locations. So I don't see any other questions or comments on the amendment. So just voting on the amendment. Oh, Director Morin, is that on the amendment?
Yeah, sorry, I thought it says beaches, parks, and trail systems, not just beaches. The report refers to beaches, local parks, and trail systems. Just to clarify there.
The report does certainly reference beaches, local parks, and trail systems and the experience in those locations. The recommendation here is specific though, because I think that was the focus of the initial request from the directors. And so that is the wording before the board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I'm just going to call the question on the vote for the amendment. Is anyone opposed to the amendment, which would include the wording its own before placement? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. So we have an amended resolution that the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service not pursue the placement of its own waste bins at beach locations within the service area. Director Abrams on that motion? Oh.
No, sorry, I thought we were going to go to the additional motion, so
Okay,
I'll wait
yeah.
for that.
So we're just speaking to the amended motion, and Director Anderson?
Thank you. I don't think that this is something we should pursue at this time. I think we should really actively work with other agencies to see if highways, et cetera, can pick it up. But I don't want to take this off the table. And so in honor of the discussion we've had, I wonder about deferring this motion until such time as we have had advocacy, so as to not preclude our capacity to do this. So I would test that I would move that we defer this matter until after contact has been made with highways and the province.
Okay, we have a motion to defer. It would require a seconder.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there's a motion to defer. We'll need a vote to defer. So the motion's on the table to defer. And are there any comments or questions on the deferral? I guess that would be just around time and place.
Time and place.
Proprietary.
And Director Arbor.
Could it be at the September meeting 2025? No, I'm just being tongue in cheek. Sorry, I'll vote against that.
Okay. So Director Anderson, I'm sorry, I didn't catch, did you have a time and place for your deferral?
I didn't. We could make one. I could say spring 2022.
Okay. And Director Lee?
In support of Director Anderson's motion and speaking only to time and place, I think it makes sense to for our fair to advocate to MOTI before we consider deciding whether waste management, Comox Strathcona Waste Management is going to be further involved or not. So makes sense to do the advocacy first, see how far we can get with MOTI. It is MOTI's property. It's, in my opinion, it is their primary responsibility to look after their rest areas and their places along the highway. All these beach accesses are on the highway. So time and place, I think we should advocate first and then consider this motion later.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question on the motion to defer. Is anyone opposed? And Director Arbor?
Cornfield's opposed.
Cornfield?
Adams.
Yeah, Adams?
McCollum's opposed.
Okay, actually, I'm going to pull the board then, sorry.
Abram opposed.
Okay. Apologies. We'll go I'll call out names, and if you can say whether you are for or against. Director Abram? And this is the motion to defer.
Yes, I'm opposed.
Opposed, okay. And Director Adams?
Opposed.
Director Anderson?
In favor?
Director Arbor? Director Colburn? Sorry, I'm not, did you hear?
We got a note saying that she would.
Sent a chat that she is involved with the shake out, so she was going to come back after that, but that's
okay. So then I'll skip over. Director Cole Hamilton. And you might be muted.
Sorry, opposed.
Yep, thank you. And Director Cornfield?
Opposed, and I didn't hear a response from Director Arbor.
Sorry, he is opposed.
Okay.
Director Davis? Are you muted?
Martin is muted.
Okay, I'm going to just skip over Director Evans.
Opposed?
Director Grieve.
In favor.
Great. And myself, I'm opposed. Director Lee.
In favor.
And Director Kerr.
In favor.
No, sure. We're just going to hold on a second. Is in favor. And Director Kerr in favor. Director Hillian.
Opposed.
Director Moran.
Opposed.
Director McCollum.
Opposed.
Director Unger.
Opposed.
Director Wally.
Opposed.
Director Bissinger.
in favor.
Director Mogul.
In favor.
Director Minions.
In favor.
Director Paulson, are you on? And
In
maybe I'll
favor.
come. Oh, great, thank you. And I'll come back to, is Director Davis back? And Director Colburn, maybe, if you're back. Okay. Is that okay to call? Yeah. So the motion's been defeated. So we are back to the amended motion that was previously discussed. I'll call the question on the amended motion to not pursue the placement of its own waste bins at beach locations. Is anyone opposed to the recommendation?
Opposed, Bissinger. Opposed, Moran.
Thank you.
Opposed, Davis.
Okay. Should we pull again? Any others?
Opposed, Moglove?
Opposed, Grieve.
Okay, sorry, we will poll again. Apologies. Can I get another? Thank you. Sorry for the delay. So on the recommendation, Director Abram.
Opposed.
Opposed? And Director
Opposed.
Adams?
In favor?
Director Anderson?
Opposed.
Director Arbor is just away from his, in favor? Director Colburn? I'll come back. Director Cole Hamilton?
Favor?
Okay, Director Cornfield?
In favor.
Director Davis?
Opposed.
Opposed? Director Evans?
In favor?
Director Grieve?
Opposed.
Myself, I'm in favor. Director Lee?
Opposed?
We'll just wait to catch up, sorry. Yeah. Okay, Director Kerr?
Opposed.
Director Hillian?
In favor.
Director Moran?
Opposed.
Director McCullough?
In favor.
Director Unger?
Sorry, in favor?
Director Unger's in favor.
Madam Chair, you didn't ask for my vote.
No, sorry, we're just tallying the votes, sorry, as we go along too. Director Wally?
Opposed.
Opposed? Director Bissinger?
Opposed.
Director Moglove?
Opposed.
Opposed? Director Minions?
In favor.
In favor? Director Paulson?
In favor.
Okay, and Dr. Sullivan's not here. I'm going to go back to Director Colburn. No, we'll just subtract her vote from.
Actually, I see it in the chat that Director Colbert is saying, I cannot control my audio. She says on the chat in favor. I just saw that. And this is Director Moglove speaking.
In favor. Thank you. We're just going to tally the numbers. Okay. The motion passes. We have 47 in favor. Okay. So thank you for finishing that. I'll entertain if there are any subsequent motions.
What was the result, Chair?
47 out of 47 out of 78.
Okay, so the motion passes.
It does.
Thank you.
It was weighted?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Do we have any subsequent motions before we move on?
Subsequent motion that the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Chair write a strongly worded letter to the appropriate managers of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, requesting that waste bins be restored at beach locations along the Highway 19A corridor.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion?
Adams, seconder.
Sorry, Director Adams, was that a second?
Yes.
Okay.
May I offer and further that?
Will you take a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Director Grieve.
Thank you. You may recall getting an email lately from the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. I think they're asking for resolutions to come forward. And I think this would be a perfect resolution for that association, being that we are the beaches that are concerned with this issue. I'm sure it would resonate up and down the island and on the coast as well. So I would say, and further that, staff be instructed to craft a resolution for the upcoming AVICC convention in April.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that amendment?
Evans, second.
Thank you. I'm just going to give staff a chance to put that motion together so everyone can read it. And then we'll have a discussion on the motion. Thanks. We're just going to have staff bring the amendment up on the screen so that we can vote on. Okay, so
And could you enlarge it so that we can read it,
thank you. Will do.
please?
So we're just going to, I guess, first discuss the amendment. Are there any comments or questions on the amendment that was forwarded by Director Grieve regarding for the furthering the resolution to AVICC?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And Director Abram, you have a comment on the amendment?
Yeah, I had my hand up actually originally to make the motion, but Brenda beat me to it. So there's a motion there, but there's an amendment we're being asked to support, which I totally support, but I don't support moving forward with this particular wording of the motion. So it's kind of silly for me to support moving a motion that I don't agree with forward to the AVICC convention. So I think, somehow we need to have a discussion about the wording of the first motion before we do the second amendment. And I don't know how you as chair will decide to do that.
Thank you. And I do see many hands up as well. So rather than trying to wordsmith this on the
Madam
fly.
Chair?
Yes,
Madam Chair, I have some advice.
please go ahead.
My advice to the board would be to defer this motion to the next meeting. This will provide the time and opportunity for each one of the regional districts to take this matter up and consider it appropriately at the services that they provide with respect to parks and recreation. They can also work together to take this issue on as a collaborative. I support the staff's initial recommendation in the report that suggests that this matter is outside the realm of the Comox Strathcona Solid Waste Management Board, but it is an important issue, but it is a complex one. And so I just suggest at this time you might want to consider deferring the matter. That gives a month's time for the regional districts perhaps to take up this matter and to come back if a unified approach if no consideration is given by them.
Thanks to our CEO for that advice.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should make them 2 motions.
Okay, regardless, I think I'm going to make the motion to defer to our next meeting. Do I have a second? Seconded by Director Arbor. On the motion to defer to the whole question of this resolution to our next meeting. Any comments on the deferral?
Edwin here.
Yes.
There's a timeline for the submissions of resolutions. I think the resolution going forward to ABICC should be more inclusive than 19A, obviously. So I do say that we have to bring this back in a timely fashion, talk about time and place, at least to get the resolution crafted and in before the deadline, which I believe is the end of January.
End of January.
Who's our rep out there?
Yes.
Pauline, you it?
Yes, you're correct. End of January.
And I think a deferral to the next meeting would give us ample opportunity to make sure that the wording is conducive. On the deferral, any other comments? Hearing
Director Lee?
Oh, Director Lee, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I apologize to Director Abram. I was encouraging him to put a motion forward and I waited for quite a while and nothing came. So that's why I put this forward on the fly. And now that it's being deferred likely, we can talk about it. Maybe you can craft better wording that you want to see go forward to highways and the ABICC for the SRD board.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question on deferral. Is anyone opposed?
I'm opposed. Adams.
Adams? Any others? Okay.
Opposed, Abram.
Abram?
Opposed, Kerr.
Kerr? Okay, and that deferral is carried. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute just bio break so that we can stretch our legs, go to the bathroom. We will come back at 10:55.
Thank you, Chair.
Hey, Brenda.
Oh, did everybody hear that? Oh, I'll call the meeting back to order. Apologies, I think I was on mute. The next item on the agenda is the September 2021 Solid Waste Management Plan Roundtable Summary for receipt. Director Arbor and Director Cole Hamilton, second, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce again Vivian Shaw for this update on this report.
Thanks, Vivian. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, James. Through the chair, back to the board. As part of our commitment from the 2019 roundtable, the staff hosted the second roundtable session on September 9th, 2021, to provide an opportunity for all the directors to identify issues and opportunities for improvement in the upcoming solid waste management planning review, with the goal of reaching the provincial performance guideline targets of 80% of the population having organics type management and a disposal rate of 350 kilograms per person per year. So the feedback from the 4 groups were summarized.
My headphones on.
Oh, sorry. So the feedback from the 4 groups were summarized in the appendix, and the general themes range from advocacy to C&D, curbside collection and source separation. There was a lot of talk about increased education and enforcement, the possibility of solid waste management licensing. So overall, there were really great discussions within each of the breakout groups, and the directors identified a number of improvement opportunities that will require significant work to fundamentally shift how we view waste and how we manage it moving forward. So as you're aware, the solid waste management plan is mandated by the province through the Environmental Management Act for regional districts to develop a comprehensive 10-year plan looking forward for the management of municipal solid waste and recyclable materials. And the current plan that we're working under was completed back in 2012, and it received approval in 2013. So we are due for an update soon. And so as we talked about at the last board meeting, the solid waste management plan review is really comprehensive, and it requires staff resources, contract resources, public input, and support of municipal staff through this process. So as also noted in the roundtable, the timing of the solid waste management plan will need to consider other engagement priorities and respect the terms of the director's terms of office. So being cognizant of the time and resource commitment, and also the timing of election next year, we discussed at length with municipal staff advisory earlier this month regarding the initiation of this plan. This was supported by the municipal staff, given its significance and impact to the management of solid waste within our region here. And municipal staff also provided input on the solid waste management advisory committee structure to best streamline administrative efficiencies while ensuring that we're striking that balance between public and technical input. through this planning process. And so to that end, we'll be reporting back in the new year, early in the new year in February, with a comprehensive report detailing the schedule and the resource commitments for the board's consideration to officially kick off the plan review process. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Vivian. Do any of the directors have questions on the roundtable summary? Director Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Vivian, for the report. I'm just fully in favor of this, and I just wanted to just note one thing. I was really pleased to see the construction and demolition as a short-term item in the next 1 to 3 years as a priority. And in the report, I was just really saddened to read that the Lake Trail gym floor, made entirely of old growth, was just smashed to bits and sent to landfill rather than repurposed in some ways. And I'm wondering, in the meantime, before we develop policy, whether it's possible to work with our institutional partners like the municipalities, SD71 and NIC, just to discuss if they are taking down any buildings of any significant size, to see if there's any element of deconstruction that can be involved in the work they're doing. This kind of flooring is highly sought after. I mean, what happened here was just a tremendous waste of old growth and an expense to us. And I'm guessing that the school board didn't necessarily decide not to deconstruct. It's just something that they just didn't consider. And I'm wondering if, and there probably aren't many opportunities, but if in future, if buildings of this scale are being brought down, if it's possible to enter into at a staff level some discussion of how deconstruction might be a part of what's done. I think it would be useful. Economically, it'd be good for us. It would probably have been good for the school board. And there's certainly a public relations and public education dimension to that as well. If at least part of the most valuable parts of some of these buildings can be salvaged. So just wondering if that might be possible at a staff level for that to occur while we're developing our plan.
Ian, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Director Cole-Hamilton, and thank you for reinitiating this important conversation back at our April SWAT meeting. The timing of the demolition of the school was definitely unfortunate, and we share the same sentiment. Through this process, we've started engaging the municipalities and all the key stakeholders to advise them of the upcoming review, and it was simply that they weren't aware of this. So moving forward, though, we have identified this as a gap, and if there are any key opportunities that may be brought to our attention, and we'd be able to hopefully work with them through this process to either as a trial or a pilot, so that we can further this discussion and guide our program development.
Okay, good to hear. Thanks, Vivian. I appreciate that.
I see Director Lee and then Director Morin and Director Evans. And then Director Arbor, did you have your hand up? Okay, so over to Director Lee. Oh, and you'll have to unmute.
In reference to Director Cole-Hamilton's suggestion to recycle materials from the school, we have an example of that happening in our region, and that was when my area bought the Maple Elementary School from the School District 72, and we decided to recycle the whole school. Every item in that school, steel doors, windows, anything that was salvageable. And it did cost us $80,000 to do the recycling. MX came in and took all the materials and recycled them. And it really warmed my heart. You just reminded me, the gym floor in that school was old growth, and it became the glue lamps for our new Oyster River Fire Hall. So I was at the fire hall with Director Grieve last week, and I looked up at the glue lamps on the ceiling and I thought, my kids walked on that floor. You know, that's where they played when they went to school. And it so warmed my heart that we saved it. So it can be done through the appropriate channels. Like Demex was really excellent at taking and recycling everything, the steel doors, the toilet, everything. So.
Thanks, Director Lee. Director Morin?
Sorry, I was unmuting there. Yeah, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Director Cole-Hamilton, and I'm wondering, I know we have a lot on the list for our communications folks, but I wondered about a little educational kind of video, much like the ones that have been done for the landfill, and you know what can be recycled and what can't, and just those short videos, because you know, myself, like many others, are looking for a spot to build on, and many people are considering buying places that have existing structures that they're not going to use, or you know, almost like tear downs. And I don't think a lot of the general public know the different options that are available, everything from deconstruction to moving homes to other areas, etc. So it might be something to consider, an educational component to not just for institutional construction, you know, deconstruction, but also private. So, I mean, I know we can't necessarily promote particular businesses, but we can certainly educate people on the options. So just one idea.
Thanks, Director Morin. Director Evans.
Thank you. And thank you to Director Cole-Hamilton for, again, articulating the importance of this moving forward. I'm not sure if staff have been in consultation with the Vancouver Island Construction Association, but I know that this is certainly a discussion point that they've been having as well. So just as part of moving forward and moving forward with what potentially will be a report coming back to the board in February, I just wanted to make that comment. And I would like to, once this has been received, put forward a motion around a resolution for AVICC. Thank you.
Thanks for that notice. I see Director Arbor, and then I think Director Kerr and Director McCollum have their hands up. So Director Arbor.
Thanks. I look at this process we're embarking on a bit like an OCP review. You know, it's this is really the master guiding document that's going to drive the service for the next 10 years or so. So I'm really excited that we'll get to partake in some of that process before the election. And when I look at before our term expires, a big role of this board, according to this planned process, is really to complete the review of the last 10 years. And strategies and options for the future are slated for 22-23, and the consultation of the public and plan adoption in 23-24, which those two mostly, I guess, will live with the future board. So I think for our board, it's really important to take that job of the systems review seriously over the next few months, and for staff to come back with really frank assessment of what were our ambitions of 2012, where did we fall short and why, where did we succeed and why? Because when the next board starts working on a new plan, you really want to understand the past and some of the obstacles you encountered, and to what extent do we need to invest in advocacy versus operations versus all these different aspects of running the service. And I have to say, I've really grown to appreciate the staff of this service a lot. I'll give you an example. 3 weeks ago, I was at an FCM vote as a new board member, and this really kind of complex file around landfill gas came up, and I sent an email, and within half an hour, I had a full briefing from staff. And I even shared it with the people on the call, and everyone was like, yeah, that's, that's right on point. So I just hope we do a great job of the review. We know we have a lot of problems. A lot of us have expressed that, but understanding where we came from and where we've gotten to, I think is the key for us in the next year. So I look forward to contribute to that effort.
Thanks, Director Upper. Director Kerr?
Thank you, Chair. And just further to Director Lee's comments, it definitely is a shame that we lost some of the first growth and the wood out of the school down in Courtenay. But for decades in Campbell River, we've been deconstructing. I know going way back, the recreation center, community center, but also the downtown college campus was Demex came in, and this was a long time ago, came in, and I removed siding, roofing from it as it was been pulled apart, and I've still got it on my shops on my property. The beams and wood from Maple School, they ended up in my living room and additions to my house. So every day I see the results of that first growth being saved in my house. So I certainly support this, but I just wanted to make the point that deconstructing isn't just starting to happen. It has been happening for many, going back decades.
Thanks, Director Kerr. Director Evans?
Yes, I will lower my hand, but I just put a proposed motion in the chat.
Okay, thank you for that. Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to highlight one of the items that came up out of the discussion around education and even enforcement when it comes to institutional recycling practices and just our role in educating and assisting our institutional, waste users in how they access recycling. Recently with the reopening of the new Lake Trail building, it's interesting that this is that there was that they had highlighted that there was going to be composting and zero waste and better recycling in that institution. And it kind of highlights the fact that that's not regular practices throughout schools in our district, and that, if kids want to recycle their yogurt containers, for the most part, they bring them home to their own blue bin. And that's certainly not unique to our schools. I work at North Island College. There's no recycling on campus unless it's paper. Generally, most businesses are quite good at recycling cardboard, but other types of recycling do often just end up in the regular waste stream. And I think it's probably some low-hanging fruit for our service to invest some more time in those kind of bigger sources of waste and ensure that they're not just ending up in the waste stream, because that's the path of least resistance for businesses that have lots of people both working and visiting them. That's the only comment I wanted to make. Thanks.
Thanks, Director McCollum, and I see nodding of heads here in the room, so I think point well taken. I'll take Director Anderson, and then I have a comment, and then I think we'll finish up the comments.
Thank you. Sorry, I lost internet there for a couple minutes. So if you called on me earlier, my apologies.
Oh, I think Director Anderson might have frozen again. Maybe I'll go to my comment and then we'll come back, Nova, if that's okay. So to Vivian, I really appreciate all the time it took to summarize the different groups that we were talking about, and I see like a lot of emphasis on education and organics diversion. And I just wanted to make a comment about education on composting, because I know it's something that is available in the Strathcona Regional District, but not in the Comox Valley one, at least for the general public. I know we do have education in schools, but the decision to close down the public, composting education center here was made. And I'm wondering if staff have considered what the alternatives are, not just for school kids, but for adults. Have staff been able to ponder what a movement forward may be?
Thanks, Chair. Certainly staff have been looking at the existing programs that have been delivered, including the curriculum education in the school districts, and you're probably familiar with the contract educator that we have in the school districts. We're also looking at the importance of rural and remote compared to the urban education aspects, and intend on bringing back report to the board. It would be leading into the financial planning process, but looking at the mix of urban and rural curriculum development and education, as well as the important aspects of having program materials to be able to educate on, and make sure we have that component to be able to develop our curriculum around. So no specific answer for you today right here, but certainly coming forward to the board.
Thank you for that. I know it was in place for many years, a demonstration of all the different composting bins and the types, and we've lost that here. Would love to see again something like that. Seeing as especially in the rural areas, we won't have curbside organics pickup, and there does seem a need for apparently not everybody composts. So either an education or some kind of way to manage those organics from coming back to the landfill. Director Anderson, are you back?
Yeah, thank you. I'll take another third stab at it here. Knowing that it's not this board that's going to be providing really the massive content for the upcoming plan, just wondering how this board can offer new ideas that could be considered by the future board. For instance, on the bottom of page 5 of this report of source separation, it talks about the interruption of global supply chain given global climate situations, and how we might look at keeping and reusing our recyclables as they become more and more of a valuable asset. I've had some interest here in my constituents of doing something innovative here. Would that just be in a director's report to the board, or is there a mechanism to offer our substantive ideas into this plan? Thanks.
Vivian, are you able to just address the sort of what's expected over the coming 6 to 8 months, I suppose, in terms of presentations to the board, and where the board discussions can be held on the solid waste plan review and what's envisioned?
Yes, thank you so much. And I completely agree with that focus on that circular economy, just understanding the value of our waste, and it's really important that we highlight that. So thank you for bringing that forward, Director Anderson. So through, as you can see on page 2 of this report, under the existing systems review, this is that opportunity to really kind of highlight, as Director Arbor had mentioned, that really frank assessment of the current, the gaps, I guess, in our current system. And as part of this process, we can identify all of those and to be able to put together the survey results. To form the formation of that survey, and which time we'll be able to ask the current board members for their more fulsome input, so that we can input that into the current system report for discussion and for consideration for the future board.
Great, thank you. Director Cornfield, I'm going to allow you in, and then I'll call the question. We'll move on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just on the review, and thank you very much to staff for the report on the roundtable summary. It was a few years ago when I attended the BC Recycling Conference in Whistler. there is so much that can be done. And when I hear comments about us as directors informing the content of the plan, and I don't think it's up to us to come out with all of the individual ideas. That's staff's role, as long as we're clear in providing the direction we want to see, whether that's deconstruction and repurposing materials, to fix it workshops, to food recycling, or not necessarily food recycling, but utilization of food, from keeping it out of the landfill where it can be provided as food ahead of time. I think our role is to provide that direction to staff on what to consider. And I go back 2 plans ago when we changed the direction on how waste was viewed, that it was to be viewed as a resource, not as a waste product itself. And I would like to see us somehow connect with the, and maybe get the recycling council to participate in informing us of programs that are there. And they do it every year in their convention, but I don't, it's unfortunate that we can't all participate in that type of convention, but maybe staff could look at working with the Recycling Council for innovative, creative new ways and what other communities are doing around the province. So that was my only sort of direction or thoughts on the summary of the roundtable.
Thanks, Director Cornfield. I'm going to call the question on receipt. Is anyone opposed to the receipt of the roundtable summary? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. And we have both a recommendation from staff, and then I do note that there is a recommendation in the chat too.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded.
Moved by Hilly and second by Unger. Comments on the recommendation from staff? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. And I believe Director Evans, you had a subsequent motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that staff prepare a draft AVICC resolution on construction deconstruction for consideration at the December board meeting.
Second.
Thank you. We're just going to bring that motion up so that everyone can see it.
And if I may, Chair, just speaking to the motion, I think it's demonstrating that we're taking action moving forward. I think the information that staff will be preparing if this motion moves forward will just help us continue to have this be top of mind. And it really does speak to what already has been identified in a time frame in the staff report as 1 to 3 years. So again, I think this is aligned with the urgency that has been identified in the report as well.
Thanks very much. That motion was first and second. And Director Cornfield speaking to this motion.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the motion, and I think I understand that construction and deconstruction, but I think it's also more than that. It's about repurposing and reusing. So as long as we're not limited to just construction and deconstruction, I think what we need to do is look at that repurposing and reuse of materials. So I'm not sure how to put it in with the resolution, but I think it needs to be expanded a little bit or to be made complete.
Chair, if I may speak to that, that is the intent of the deconstruction, that it is for repurposing. So if Director Cornfield would like to suggest an amendment to that that includes repurposing, I would suggest exactly where that could happen is just a resolution on repurposing construction deconstruction materials.
Okay, just as a friendly?
Yep.
think maybe staff can just throw it in and see.
Yeah, I think that's being done as we speak. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on the motion?
I have a question. Do you need the word construction in there? Repurposing of deconstruction materials would make it clear.
I don't know, staff, do you want to comment on the wording of the motion?
I guess if I could, typically resolutions that go to AVICC are to request something from AVICC or from UBCM or from the province in terms of policy changes and practices. I'm not entirely clear if there's a specific request here to AVICC or if this is more intended to be some information that's being shared. And I see Russell does have his hand up, so he may have some background or context on this.
Yeah, I'll go over to RCA Russell Dyson.
I think the question was about the about construction being included. It's very important because there's a lot of materials in the process of construction that otherwise go to waste. A air conditioning unit comes packed in wood or plastic, right? We want to ensure that that is repurposed as well. So construction is relevant as well as deconstruction.
Thank you. Director Evans?
Yes, thank you. And I think that's the purpose of moving this forward as a draft resolution because it will be crafted. I will assume that staff will craft it in a way that has a call to action and recommendations included in it.
Okay, thanks. That's understood now. Director Mulgrove?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think in terms of the ask, one of the asks of the province would be some kind of incentivization of this whole concept of deconstruction and repurposing because we know it's more expensive. So I think that's one of the things that we would be asking for is the province to take the lead on incentivizing. So I mean, just an idea in terms of what the resolution might look like, because I agree, the resolution has to ask for something, and we want to be relatively specific. Well, I wouldn't say too specific, but yeah, we have to ask for something.
Great, thank you. And staff are noting. And I think we had Director Grieve and then Director Cornfield.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through to Claire, I mean, this would be not necessarily AVICC centric, and you would assume it would go forward to UBCM for the broader discussion and would end up at Advocacy Days in Victoria in February next year, or the year after, I guess now.
Thank you. Director Cornfield?
Thank you, Chair. And just to, I think incentivizing may be just one possible option. There's a reason that Demex comes in and repurposes and salvages materials for resale. It's because they can make money doing it. And I wouldn't want to see us incentivizing one business over another. I think staff should be able to craft a resolution that has the appropriate ask on methods that can be used to make this a reality, and whether or not come back to us with that in that draft. If they think it should be limited in a particular area or expanded and made broader. So I have every faith in staff coming back with a pretty reasonable draft resolution.
Thank you. And staff are noting, and I'm seeing nodding, so that point has been taken so that no one business is favored over another. So thank you. I don't see any more hands up, so I'm going to call the question on the motion as what's on your screen. Is anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. Thank you, everyone, for that discussion. Next item on our agenda is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation statutory holiday.
Second.
Thank you, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair, and over to Vivian Shaw for this report also. Vivian.
Hey, James. Through the chair to the board. So since the a June 3rd, 2021 federal announcement, the BC government has also established September 30th as a day of commemoration in British Columbia here to honor the victims, survivors, and their families and the communities of the residential schools. Following the resolution from the June board, both the Cumberland and the Campbell River facilities remained open this September 30th due to operational ramifications to residents and businesses, in particular the municipal curbside collection contracts that were already in place, given that there were a limited time to provide notification and accommodations for an updated schedule. But as we look forward and prepare the curbside calendars for future years, we've consulted with the member municipalities regarding the future National Day for Truth and Reconciliations. And we were all in agreement that it is important to continue to recognize the legacy of the residential schools and support the full facility closures of both the Campbell River and the Cumberland facilities starting in 2022. And this has been worked through in terms of our QP contract, which provides the provision for employees to have the day off on September 30th in observance of this day. Available for questions if there are any.
Thanks, Vivian. Are there any other comments or questions on the report? Director Cornfield. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to click on all the right little buttons. Not everyone gets September 30th off. And so how did we make out on our cost savings last year? Like, did we achieve success on that? And I was a little concerned about closing them on the holidays. The amount of money we saved, I'm not sure was worth it. There's two differences. Comox, I believe, is, or at least the Cumberland landfill is run by CBRD staff versus a contract operation in Campbell River. And so there's different ways of treating people, and I just wanted to make sure that the costs, or at least the amount of money that we recovered or saved, is worth all of the effort.
Okay. Thank you. I think Russell has a hand up for a comment on that.
Yeah, just to say that with respect to the overall closure of our facilities on statutory holidays, we'll come back through the financial planning process and give you that which you're asking for, Director Cornfield. I just want to say that with this particular holiday and the utter significance of it at this time and place, and the fact that all CVRD employees have the day off, it's very important that we carry through with this recommendation despite the financial implications. But I know that this is new to the service being closed on statutory holidays, and for those other statutory holidays, we'll definitely report back on what the implication was during the financial planning process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll call the question on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt of the report? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. And we have a recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Arbor and Lee. Any questions or comments on the recommendation as presented? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. And lastly, we have the CSWM management report for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
And second, Hillian and Moran, I believe. And over to staff, or?
Thanks, Chair, and staff are available for any questions directors might have on the management report.
Give a few seconds for, I don't see any hands up. Okay, hearing and seeing none. Is anyone opposed to receipt? And that's carried. And no new business and no media questions. I'll entertain a motion to terminate.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Arbor and Hillian. Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you, everybody.
Just process, do we need to log off or to leave this program and then
Yes.
re-come in?
It's a separate link, so it should be in your emails. So you'll log off, leave, and then join the new
Okay,
stream.
if I could get staff to send me the link for the SWAT meeting, I had to request it for the regular meeting this morning, so.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. See you guys this afternoon.